Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hello, Marina.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Today is the official day you're not allowed to say Happy New Year to anyone, even if you haven't seen them before. This is the last, this is like the 12th night for
Osman has
Happy
called
New Year.
it, and that is what's happening.
Listen, it's not me calling it. That's just, it's in Debrett's.
It's something in the air, in the waters.
Yeah, exactly. No more Happy New Years. Can I give you an exclusive that our lovely friends at More in Common have sent us, the polling organisation?
Yes.
Because we're absolutely loving Traitors. No spoilers, don't worry, anybody. But anyone who's watching, it's, again, every series is different. It's like sport, the Traitors. Every series is different, but there's always stuff going on. But More in Common polled Traitors viewers and they asked them their voting intentions. But they split it into people who would rather be a traitor and people who would rather be faithful.
Ooh.
Okay. So Traitors viewers, if the general election were tomorrow and it was the only people allowed to vote were people who would want to be a faithful if they were on the Traitors, we have a Labour landslide. We have a 13-point victory for the Labour Party. If, however, the general election was only people who would rather be a traitor, we have a Tory landslide. What does that tell us?
Well,
what does that
it tells us that people who wish to vote Labour don't understand that the strongest position in the game is being a traitor. And I'm very sorry, but that is moronic. I'm not doing a bit of politics here, but I have to say that's arresting.
But I mean, it's quite often with those More in Common things, you get the occasional slight difference in things. That is a huge swing between people who'd rather be a faithful on Traitors and people who'd rather be a traitor. An absolutely huge, statistically significant thing. But yeah, I would always rather be a traitor. Always.
Well, you know what we'd actually rather be? We would rather be a faithful who's late in the game recruited as a traitor, which is the strongest position.
The thing I'd like most of all...
They didn't poll on that.
They did not poll. Come on,
So
More in
niche.
Common. The thing I'd like to be more than anything is someone just watching the Traitors.
Yeah.
That's my favourite thing. But isn't that amazing? So Faithful's huge Labour lead, Traitors huge Tory lead. So thank you to More in Common. I think they're going to be tweeting that out
Thank you for
today as well.
The naivety is astounding. I'm talking about the Traitors.
The Rock versus Vin Diesel. As you say, this is a feud that goes back to around 2016 when
goes back to 2016.
They both appeared in Fast 5, the fifth film in the Fast and Furious franchise. Wow, that's a lot of Fs in one sentence.
That's a lot
there.
of Fs. So we're talking about it now because last Sunday, not the one we've just had, but the one before was the Golden Globes, which passed off relatively without incident. But Vin Diesel was on stage to present an award. Certainly wasn't going to be winning one. And when he came out to give it...
By the way, whenever you get like a message that's from the BAFTAs or something that says, attention, Richard Osman, you think, hello, someone's been nominated, and they go, I wonder if you'd like to present the Best Factual Daytime Lifestyle Show award. You go, no. Okay,
but with Vin Diesel.
Yes.
So he was presenting...
I have a lot of Vin Diesel-like qualities.
Yeah. Well, you both have very high-rating franchises.
Yeah.
Yours literary, the car thing.
Yeah, the car thing.
I'm joking because I've watched all the car thing. Anyway, he goes on stage and he's about to present the award and he sort of greets the audience as you do. And then he goes, hi, Dwayne. And they cut to The Rock in the audience, kind of slightly surprised by this moment, smiling, sort of awkward half grin.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, did The Rock just get served again? And what I have to do, really, as you're right, Richard, is I have to take you back to the year 2016.
Deep dive.
Yeah, deep dive, okay.
Listen, Brexit is all the rage.
It's a year of seismic shocks.
Yeah, isn't it just?
Trump and The Rock thinks that Vin Diesel is wet, okay? Right? Now, Liberals didn't see any of those coming, right? Any of those things, okay? Let's get inside the action.
It all started with an Instagram post by The Rock. He was filming Fast 5.
Yeah.
And
Can I just say who's in that movie?
Of course you can.
We need to know who's in it, apart from the ladies.
Everyone knows who's in Fast 5.
Vin Diesel, The Rock, Jason Statham, Ludacris, Scott Eastwood. So it's beefcakes, but there's also the other type of beef, right?
Yes.
Now, normally The Rock would just do like workout tweets, like, however many reps a minute, better never stops, loads of hashtags. Like, yes, likewise.
Yeah.
And he salutes his female co-stars.
Yeah, he says, he calls an unnamed member of the cast a candy ass.
Yeah, he says some conduct themselves as stand-up men and true professionals, while others don't. The ones that don't are too chicken shit to do anything about it anyway. candy asses.
Yeah.
When you watch this movie next April and it seems like I'm not acting in some of these scenes, yes, I can imagine, and my blood is legit boiling, you're right. Well, that was the cat amongst the candy asses.
So who is his beef with? Is it with Scott Eastwood? Is it with Ludacris? Is it with Jason Statham? Or
is it? Because, you see, the others are all complaining that they are all suspects. Remember, this is a movie essentially about people who drive cars between skyscrapers, right? But it's
the best kind of movie.
Okay, but if that movie is Apocalypse Now, then this tweet is It's Hearts of Darkness, right? That's the documentary that Ellen Coppola made about the making of, right? So who is the candy ass? Somehow you've got to go to work. You've somehow got to pretend you're driving a car into a Chinook or something.
Yeah.
Or
a Chinook into a car.
Or a Chinook into a car. And you've got this hanging over your head / candy ass.
Yes.
Right?
And maybe your head looks a bit like a candy ass.
Because it emerges that the candy ass in question is none other than Mr. Vin Diesel, real name Mark Sinclair.
Mark Candy Ass Sinclair.
I often wonder about the choice of Diesel and because I speak American, and he doesn't go with gasoline, which we call petrol.
Yeah,
he goes with diesel.
Vin Octane is a good name.
He goes
Vin
with diesel. And I sometimes think that it's because, actually, although it may seem sort of expensive and quite unsexy in some ways, if you have to go over a long distance with it, and Christ knows if you've got to do 11 movies with it, it begins to make sense as a value proposition, diesel, over long distances.
I see what you mean. But if I was Vin Diesel and then all the stuff came out about all the emissions tests cheating by Volkswagen and others about diesel cars, and suddenly diesel is less of a great brand for him.
Yeah.
Diesel lost a lot of its luster.
Well, he's yet to comment on it.
Vin Rouge, I would call myself after that.
So there was a huge drama with this business with The Rock, right? But they somehow managed to wrap the movie. And The Rock says, with any family, there's going to be conflict. Another post. Family is going to have differences of opinion, blah, blah. Like any family, we get better from it.
Yeah, he said, I was raised on healthy conflict. That's what The Rock said. Yeah. And I relish it.
Yeah. They always say that Fast Furious is about family. They talk about that all the time. That's the only thing that they can think it's about.
Car crashes.
It's literally about.
That's okay.
It's literally about driving a Lycan Hypersport between one skyscraper in Abu Dhabi and another.
By the way, I love the Fast and Furious franchises.
So do I. I've watched them all.
Absolutely. So all of this is said with love for the franchise.
Yeah, with love. And I love that we're both now talking like them, like with love, like brothers.
Exactly.
This comes from a place of resolve.
Yeah. So two of my brothers, Dwayne and Vin, right, they're having an argument. Anyway, so it becomes apparent that the candy ass is Vin. It becomes public that it's Vin. There's all sorts of stuff in the lead up to that movie coming out, all this family stuff.
Well, they can really get into it once they're offset.
And also, The Rock says it's actually been very good for tracking.
Yeah,
so
I know.
It's been very good for box office.
The Rock is one of those people who talks to people. He has that slight bit of knowledge. So he'll talk about movies in that way. So he'll say, the irony is that when they did that, the tracking went through the roof. He talks about the fans and says, I love you so much. All I care about is you. But he also has to constantly bore them with his reps per minute and nonsense about the tracking of a movie and verticals, which he did with, you remember Red One was this movie at Christmas.
The Christmas one.
Yeah, well, we'll come to that one in a minute. That completely shat the bed in theatres. Right back then, when this movie's come out, he is saying, because everyone's asking about the tweet or the Instagram post or whatever it was, Vin says, I protect the franchise. I protect everyone, including Dwayne. Oh, I protected Dwayne more than he'll ever know. And it doesn't matter. He doesn't have to know. Well, you're saying it in the Rolling Stone or something. But anyway, he appreciates it. He knows it. Dwayne has only got one Vin in his life. Dwayne Johnson has one big brother in this film world, and that's me.
But didn't he say, I protected Dwayne more than he'll ever know. He doesn't have to know, but he knows. Well, that's covered everything.
At which point The Rock thinks, right, I'm going to give an interview to Rolling Stone, in which he says, we have a fundamental difference in philosophies of how we approach movie making and collaborating. All right, Almodovar. Vin Diesel then thinks, I'm not having that. So he goes back and he says, look, it was a really tough character to embody, the Hobbs character, a sort of law enforcement agent turned one of the gang. My approach at the time was a lot of tough love to assist in getting that performance where it needed to be. oh, are you talking about giving The Rock acting lessons?
Yeah.
As a producer to say, okay, we're going to take Dwayne Johnson, who's associated with wrestling, and we're going to force his cinematic world audience members to regard this character as someone they don't know. Okay. He hits you like a ton of bricks. That's something I'm proud of. You're proud of The Rock's performance. Interesting. I could give a lot of tough love. Not Fellini-esque. Oh, you spoiled me, Vin.
Oh, you're not Fellini-esque, you say. Sorry, Vin, can we just, because I've been listening back to the transcript of the interview I did, just one other question. There's a point where it sounds like you're saying that you're not Federico Fellini. I assume you're saying that you are Federico Fellini.
What he says is, I would do anything I'd have to do in order to get performances in anything I'm producing.
Wow.
That is it for The Rock. Another interview in which he says...
Essentially, by the way, his performance is having his like kind of elbow out of the window while he's driving.
So,
again, I love the franchise.
Which I love it. I love the franchise. Okay, so by the way, these interviews, these dueling interviews have taken us all the way to sort of past Fast 8 at this point. And then he says, The Rock says, I wish them well on Fast 9. And I wish them the best of luck on Fast 10 and Fast 11 and the rest of the Fast and Furious movies they do that will be without me. And they said, what do you think about the tough love comments that Vin Diesel made about your acting? And he said, I laughed and laughed hard.
So at this stage, he has said, listen, I loved being in that movie. There is absolutely no way I'm ever going to do another Fast and Furious movie. For those catching up, Marina, did he do another Fast and Furious movie?
Well, what Vin Diesel does, first of all, he gets John Cena, one of The Rock's rivals, into some of the previous Fast movies.
Clever.
He then says to The Rock, will you be joining in again? And he says, in 2021, The Rock says, I will not be returning to that franchise, never. I'm looking at the end credit scene in Fast 10 in 2023, and this confirms that Luke Hobbs, a.k.a. The Rock, will be back for Fast 11. And you know what The Rock says? Because this is how he talks. We'll lead with brotherhood and resolve and always take care of the franchise, characters and fans that we love. I've built my career on an audience-first mentality, and that will always serve as my North Star. Everything he talks about has to be like this. We've been brothers for years, and you know, despite our differences, when you lead with the idea of resolve, but you think about the future, you think about fans that are much bigger than ourselves.
Wow, when you face the future with resolve,
yeah,
and you think about fans who are much bigger than ourselves, there's not many fans who are much bigger than The Rock.
No. Well, you know my thoughts that he's certainly not 6'5".
Yes, well, we talked about that.
Yeah.
What is he, like 5'7"?
No, I think he's probably 6 foot. We've spoken about this previously, but it's always worth going into it again, and we will make sure that the clip is in the show notes, where The Rock and Vin Diesel are facing up to each other, or so it seems, like they're going tit to tit, really, in their ridiculous vests.
Peck to peck.
Peck to peck. I don't know the names of their muscles. It's not for me. And it looks as though and then when you actually look, and because of the relative difference in height, they have to actually be... The way the camera angles work, they're not even opposite each other. They're sort of next to each other, but facing different ways.
Oh, like a perspective thing.
Yeah, it's a freaky game of perspective, and it's very funny, and we'll put it in the show notes.
So who's taller?
The Rock is taller.
Is he?
Yeah.
See, Vin Diesel is older.
Yeah.
The Rock is taller. It's like me and my brother. It's exactly the same. And he actually... I think of my brother very much like... He's like a brother to me.
Yeah.
He really, really is. So The Rock is taller, but Vin Diesel feels like he's in charge of this franchise. But Vin Diesel probably feels like The Rock is more famous than him.
Vin Diesel, let me tell you, will be so thrilled that Red One opened in cinemas and didn't do anything. Okay, this is the Christmas movie just before this Christmas we've last had that didn't do well. Okay, so Amazon then rush it onto streaming, only for The Rock to tweet, our little Christmas movie, by the way, it cost $250 million without marketing, so we're nearing about $500 million here. Our little Christmas movie, Red One, shattered a viewing record on Amazon Prime Video with 50 million viewers this past weekend. Red One has a very long shelf life with multiple verticals. Kudos to our Amazon partners for their strategic win that's just getting started.
He's such a man of the people.
He's such an algorithm frotter, isn't he? He just, the way he talks.
An algorithm frotter. Is this a thing? Wow.
It is now.
I think I might be an algorithm frotter. Oh no, me and The Rock.
Well, don't be an algorithm frotter, but he is one. And, Merry Christmas verticals.
Yeah.
We're walking along in a verticals wonderland.
Yeah. We used to call them chimneys.
Yeah. I suppose what you wanted to be, he wanted to be Schwarzenegger. And there was a point, don't forget, there has been serious points where people have talked about The Rock as a future president. And, there may well be again. I mean, there were times when he was talking about running in 2020, 2024, that he wanted to be Schwarzenegger. He wanted to be the action star who becomes the sort of political figure. Obviously, Schwarzenegger became governor of California. But the trouble is, I think he's significantly more limited than Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to know who is sort of totally on top in this thing, because it does remain Vin Diesel's franchise. But they're so good at getting people thinking about that. I mean, I want all celebrities to be very, very clear. I love the franchise and I want all celebrities to behave like this, if possible, at all times.
Beefs non-stop.
Non-stop beef.
I want Alistair Campbell to do a quote saying, one of my co-stars is a candy ass. and we have to work out who that might be.
I mean, I would faint for it. Yeah. I want the behind the scenes on it 100%. Okay, so after the Golden Globes, when everybody's talking about like, oh my God, it's going to be so awkward, because they haven't gone on set for Fast 11 yet. They certainly won't have a script. As far as I know, when they get on set, they never have a script for this thing. It's whatever Vin wants. Yeah. So there will be candy-ass fireworks from that set.
Candy-ass fireworks?
Let me assure you.
Charlie XCX's new album.
He posted a picture of The Rock after saying all love, always.
Vin Diesel did?
Yeah. A picture of him and The Rock from Fast 5 saying all love, always. So that is the history of their feud. And in a darkening world, can we just give thanks for stars that behave in this preposterous fashion with incredibly low stakes that you could never possibly take seriously and can just enjoy?
Yes, it has zero real-world impact, does it?
Yeah. No.
Because the other issue, of course, is Vin Diesel is not a bad actor. If you watch something like Boiler Room, which is his first big movie, he's really good in it before he was a big action star. And, perhaps The Rock maybe has a more limited scope of acting skills.
Yeah, because you know what, Vin Diesel, I might have spoken about this on the podcast before, but I'm sorry if I'm as invested in this project almost as much as Vin Diesel is. What Vin Diesel really wants to do, and what he's wanted to do ever since he exploded onto our screens in XXX as a sort of,
Yeah, Xander Cage.
Yeah, Xander Cage.
Who's like Xander Armstrong meets Nicolas Cage.
An extreme sports version of James Bond.
Yeah, which, by the way, is a really good idea. I'm surprised it didn't do better.
Yeah, anyway, what he's always wanted is someone to say, look, you've driven enough cars into helicopters now. What I want to do, Vin, is give you basically $500 million so you can make your Hannibal epic. And I'm not talking about the serial killer. I am talking, Vin Diesel wants to take a bunch of elephants across the Alps in a sort of ancient Rome kind of epic, and he has wanted to do that. And you can find, ever since he first, as I say, he first appeared on our screens as Xander Cage, he has given interviews, giving updates on where we are. We nearly got the money, we haven't got the money, I still want to do it.
One of the elephants has died.
He just feels if he just once more goes round the block in a really fast car, then someone is going to shut down a ski resort for him and get a load of pachyderms and let him make the movie he was born to make.
Well, and, I'm surprised someone hasn't. That would kind of make sense.
Would you give half? I mean, you're definitely... if you had $500 million, honestly, how many billions would you have to give half of one to Vin Diesel? I mean, I actually wouldn't have to have that many to just watch the spectacle.
Even Elon Musk, you go into his office and go, listen, it would really rile the libs if you did this. Even he'd be going, I don't know. It's a lot of money. It is a lot of money.
Please let him have some elephants and one of the lesser ski resorts so he can take these elephants across the Alps.
Let's crowdfund it.
Yeah.
Let's crowdfund it from the rest of the entertainment listeners. Let's get Vin Diesel up and Alp. Hashtag get Vin Diesel up and Alp.
I want this to happen so much. I genuinely think I could be more invested in it than him.
Oh, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. I'll say to Vin Diesel, I have the money for you. I have the whole thing. I've gone to Gary Lineker. I've got the money. But Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has to be in it as well.
I'm not playing an elephant.
Yeah. There you go. Let's do that. Let's get Vin Diesel on the phone.
Oh, God, I really want this so much. Okay.
Fast and Furious is the opposite of elephants, who are sort of, and essentially that's what he wants to do, slow and thoughtful.
But again, big units. Big muscle units.
Just call it, Vin, if you're listening. He does listen, doesn't he? Because he sent a question in, didn't he, about blockbusters. If you're listening, call it big units. okay? Because and suddenly everyone's going to fund that. Vin Diesel in big units. That's got big units 4, big units 5, where essentially he gets other animals and takes them up other mountains. But watch this space. Vin Diesel's mum. Do you know what Vin Diesel's mum does for a living?
No.
She's an astrologer.
Is she?
Yeah. You like?
Is she? I really like it.
She's called Elaine Diesel. She's not. I don't know what her name is, but she's an astrologer.
Sinclair, presumably.
I'll say, yeah. Well, I don't think she's even called Elaine.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that's just my go-to name. That's my go-to if I'm making a name up. Now, we are going to talk about the fires in Hollywood, what it means for the entertainment industry. Obviously, at the heart of all of this is people have lost their homes and their livelihoods and what have you. We will focus on what it means for Hollywood, but we're not in any way downplaying how difficult it's been for everybody out there and continues to be so.
Absolutely. Lots of people were thinking about leaving LA anyway before this happened. And I've talked to so many people over the past week, people connected with the industry, people in the industry in LA who've said that it's sort of extraordinary because they really felt the town was on the brink anyway. One of the things that I found quite interesting was when they said how many shows have been shut down because of the fires. And really, there are so few because
it's almost none. Yeah.
So much production no longer happens in LA. It doesn't happen at all in LA. It happens basically because LA hasn't kept pace with tax credits and things like that. And so production, there are a whole other centre. Netflix has got this amazing kind of like spaceship-like facility down in Albuquerque in New Mexico.
Yeah, New Mexico gets a lot. Atlanta gets a lot. The UK gets an awful lot. Essentially, in any way you can get tax incentives. And as you say, LA has been has been slower on tax incentives than other places. I guess because traditionally it was the heart and home of movies. So why would you offer those tax incentives? Because of course people are going to film in LA. But it's been getting less and less. I think 25% of all film and TV production was actually done in LA in 2013, and that's come down from 35%, 45%. So it's getting smaller and smaller, the industry in LA. Anyway,
the strikes the pandemic put people out of work. The strikes, again, put people out of work. I mean, it's really difficult. Again, many of the people I've spoken to this week have said they hear so many terrible stories of people just thinking, I'm going to leave LA. But because of the nature of the business in so many ways, it's a real sort of American dream business in lots of ways that you can tell yourself that you're involved in making magic. And therefore, it's much harder to leave that job and do something completely different than it might be in other ways. And so people, I'm talking about crew, what we'd call below the line people.
It's like that wonderful joke in The Franchise, your show.
Yeah, which isn't coming back, by the way.
Oh, no.
No, not enough people watched it.
I mean, that's the business. That's the business for it, isn't it?
It's cancelled.
Where there's the guy who works in a circus and his job is following the elephants and shoveling their dung all day. And his friend says, I've found you a job in an office. He goes, well, I'm not going to do that. Give up show business. I'm
afraid, that is really it. And it's, I was talking to one showrunner and he said he was hearing of many suicides. People have been out of work. Crew have been out of work for a long time. The strikes made it really difficult. There's a production slowdown. There's a huge production contraction because, as we know in the streaming wars, there was a kind of race for scale. And so people spent money they didn't have to build scale and to kind of win. And therefore, there were huge numbers of shows being made. And it's going to come down to about half the amount of scripted shows. So there isn't the work. There are very different estimates of how many people in LA work in the film and TV industry, but it's, a minimum of sort of 200,000 people. It's a lot of people. Lots of them are living in communities that have been, not the sort of great big mansions, which obviously have also burnt down, but in communities that have been like Altadena and places like that where have been completely devastated by fire and people have lost their homes. So a lot of people were on the brink with staying in LA before all this happened. There's so much long-term unemployment. One thing I wanted to talk about a bit, because it's such a fascinating book, and as soon as I sort of saw the news starting to happen, I thought of this book. It's by a guy called Mike Davis. It's called Ecology of Fear, and it was published in 1998, which is when I read it. And it's absolutely extraordinarily prescient as a book. Now, Mike Davis was a kind of urban theorist. He was a radical. He was an anti-capitalist in lots of ways. He was a sort of globalization visionary. The book talks about all sorts of climate stuff, but he also has this incredibly eclectic mind. And he was particularly fascinated. he loved culture, and he was sort of fascinated by the way that LA is both a utopia and a dystopia for kind of advanced capitalism. It's this kind of dream factory, but it's also a kind of place of nightmares in lots of ways. And it's built, obviously LA is built on all kinds of fault lines, quite literally and also metaphorically. And he was fascinated in a way about it being a town that so often makes movies and fiction about its own destruction. And so if you look at all the idea of the sort of disaster genre and urban disasters, London was in fiction between sort of the 1880s and 1940. London is the metropolis that is most often under attack. And London being under attack in fiction, whether it be film or novels or whatever it is, represents a sort of the destruction of Western culture. But then it's the American century and everything, the centre of cultural gravity basically moves west. And it's really interesting. But how often LA has been destroyed. City Hall, at the time he was writing in 1998, LA City Hall in fiction and movies had fallen to earthquakes more than 30 times. There had been nukes over the Hollywood sign well over 60 times. Fast storms only twice. Fire had only twice, which is a sort of... But, obviously alien invasions were very big. And LA just being destroyed, as I say, so often is pitched as a sort of win for civilization. Mike Davis calls it a kind of gleeful expendability.
Right.
And I think it's really interesting in light of what has happened. I mean, in Independence Day, Independence Day, the movie where the aliens come, the destruction of New York is kind of played as a tragedy, but the destruction of LA is played as farce. There's some like hippies and gay people and kind of new age people dancing on a roof as the aliens are coming, saying, "Oh, this is so
Sounds
cool."
like LA.
Yeah, Bob Dole, he was the former Republican candidate, unsuccessful presidential candidate, but was a sort of House Majority Leader, said one of his advisors said they absolutely loved it. One of his advisors said millions die, but they're all liberals. So, and LA is often depicted as a kind of post-apocalyptic place. If you look at, it'd be interesting to see how Edgar Wright does it with his Running Man remake, where the Running Man, the original, takes place in kind of downtown LA. It's so unignorable what has happened over the past week, the past 10 days. And yet, will it be ignored? And if you talk to people in the industry, they will want to get back. And I'm talking about those fault lines. People kind of live on the brink in so many different ways. Clearly, they're living on an ecological brink. We know they're living on a fault line. They're living on the brink as an industry in lots and lots of ways. But it's extraordinary, the impulse to just get back to normal.
Yeah, most people you talk to, say we're not going to move out, we're going to rebuild. But that's something that rich, successful people can say. And actually, most of the people who work in the industry in Hollywood can't do that. But the truth is, a lot of those have moved out already, and as you say, there's actually not all that much production going on in Hollywood and in LA, and hasn't been for a long time. What's remaining in LA is the money, and what's remaining is the studios, and by studios now we mean the executives rather than the physical studios, because those by and large are not there anymore. When
we had the franchise premiere, I remember saying we had it at Paramount, which is this unbelievably beautiful old Hollywood lot, which is the last remaining studio in Hollywood. And at the time, I remember saying I would have thought that the real estate, now Paramount's in the process of being sold, is almost worth more than the studio now.
But almost everybody involved in making TV and making film is not an executive and is not a star.
Yeah.
Most people are people just...
Or an agent.
Going to work.
Yeah.
And those people will go where the work is. And, increasingly that's not going to be LA. That, as you say, is Atlanta, it's New Mexico, it's Toronto, it's London,
it's Australia.
It's Australia, all of these different places. But, a lot of that has already started. So the question is, Hollywood finished? It feels like it's not, because it feels like the people who now embody Hollywood probably do have the money to stay. They all want to stay in Hollywood because of what it represents and the lifestyle that they have there. And so, as you say, it's weird to sort of live in this slightly apocalyptic place that is on a series of fault lines. But as TV and film have declined, Hollywood has taken huge amounts of money in social media and social content and in live sports and gaming and all of those things. A lot of that stuff is coming out of Los Angeles still, but it's the executives and it's the people commissioning things and it's the money people, and it's Netflix, it's the kind of head offices and stuff are all still in LA. But what we think of now, when we say Hollywood, we think of the star system and we think of all those studios being full, week after week after week and the movies coming out, and that hasn't been true in some while, but the money of the industry is still there, and the money probably can stay. But yeah, I think that, yes, Hollywood will just be the money people, but I think it probably has been for quite a few years now anyway. There was a point at which one of the fires, the one up, almost, it was in the Hollywood Hills and almost got to the Hollywood sign. Yeah. That feels like the moment. The Hollywood sign on fire would be a hell of an image, but I think it's sort of been on fire for some time.
Yes, but obviously the situation is still developing, and it's an absolutely awful situation that is above all a human situation and not to do with the film industry. However, we're looking at it through that particular lens because of who we are.
Our love to everyone who's been affected. Again, I was speaking to someone who's out there at the moment, and I was talking about, our business is going to move out. He says, look, people are going to move out, but he said the first business that will move out would seem to, in some way, have betrayed Hollywood, and actually was being seen in some way un-American, to kind of go, we're relocating to Atlanta or whatever. So his view would be that all the big studios, all the big businesses are going to stay exactly where they are, where they are, and try and rebuild. But there's things you can rebuild and things that you can't. And our love to everyone who has lost things that cannot be rebuilt.
Absolutely. Right, let us move on to Better Man, this is the Robbie Williams biopic, which uses his own voice and lots of his real concert footage. But it is a story, and his head has been replaced by a CGI monkey. Yeah. It's directed by Michael Gracie, who did The Greatest Showman, which was huge, extremely not my cup of tea. But
it's had very good reviews.
People, by and large,
seem to like it. However, it cost $110 million.
Is the sort of top line, but we'll delve into that in a minute.
Which even in these days is quite a lot. It opened last week in the US on 1,300 screens, and it made just $1 million. And just to put that in perspective, The Brutalist, which is the Holocaust drama, opened on 68 screens and made $1.4 million. So it opened on,
That is a drama which is brilliant. It has an intermission. It has a interval in the middle, and it's sort of 3.5 hours or whatever it is.
But $1 million on 1,300
it's
screens.
It's taken 5 in the UK, but it's been open for 3 weeks.
Yeah. But it's the definition of a tank, really. Yeah. And it's interesting because, firstly, it's agreed to be a rather good film. It's certainly a risky film.
It's 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. It is a big swing.
Yeah, it's a big swing. We're always saying people should take risks, people should do something unusual, which is exactly what they've done here. But what I haven't quite got to the bottom of is who put up $110 million for, because Robbie is huge over here, he's huge in Australia, he's huge in various places, not huge in America. So to say, here's a guy you don't really know, he has got superimposed the head of a monkey, and it's cost $110 million. How did that come together?
How did that happen? Riddle me that. Okay.
Yeah, and Vin Diesel's not even in it.
Nor an elephant, but we do have a chimp head. CGI is very, very expensive, and if this is effectively, it's not a concert movie, but there's so much concert footage. I've seen it. That's going to be very, very expensive. The money is complicated because it seems like the movie, people are saying, how have Paramount spent $110 million on this? Well, they haven't. Okay, Paramount have paid $25 million for the North American rights, which was, by the way, that's what the whole movie should have cost, given the subject matter. And now some of that, is for marketing and distribution, whatever. But it's independently produced, but it's really, really patchworked together, and it's interesting. The financing, there's some Chinese, there's some Canadian.
Which, by the way, is how a lot of movies are made these
when
days,
you go into
you find
a
money from different places.
Well, we were going to do a joke about that one day in the franchise when someone was thinking about getting out, which now it's not coming back, I can say. She was thinking about not going to go into, trying to leave, sort of getting out of a superhero franchise movie type world, and then going to watch one of those films where it begins with like the lottery fund of Ottawa. You see all those cards before you even see the name of the star of the film.
It's always Canal Plus, and then it's
Canal Plus, lottery funding of Ottawa. The that, and you've seen and we were just going to have 30 of those cards.
The teachers pension fund of Melbourne.
The sheer horror show of trying to get. I mean, it's so hard to get money together to make a movie when you're making a independent film, and anyone who's involved involved in it will tell you it's a massive labour of love.
But here, you've got Michael Gracie, who's just had a huge hit with The Greatest Showman, an absolutely massive hit. So he is...
So people have gambled on, but it's taken a lot of people. He's got Chinese, he's got Canadian, US funding. The biggest thing has come from subsidies from Australia. Now, Australia is a really interesting story in terms of, over the past 15 years, the Australian government has put more than 15 billion, okay, bear in mind the size of the country, into the film industry. And there's a huge sort of producer offset thing. And if you make, this was basically done in Australia. They believe it's a benefit to the country. There's a lot of pushback saying, well, how many jobs are really being created? Is it really worth it? But they have these huge cash grants. The Fall Guy was basically made there. So I think in this case, they have had such a significant amount of money from the Australian government. Robbie Williams needs to be a star in America for this movie to have any shot at anything. However, you can tell that they were... Another little thing you can tell about a film of like what its aspirations are is where it premieres, which particular festivals it chooses. Now, they put it at Telluride and at Toronto. So what they really hoped was that this was going to be an awards movie, which it hasn't been. And whereas something like A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic with Timothée Chalamet, is going to be a major awards contender. I chewed through that. I have to say that the music biopic genre is my least favourite.
Oh, I love it. Bohemian Rhapsody, one of my favourite films of the last 10 years. I love it.
Are you joking?
No, I love it. If you watch that as the John Deacon story, it's the greatest movie ever made. Okay. You've got a take. But in general, music... Sorry, you're saying I've got a take?
Yeah, so you've got a take. Okay, the John Deacon story is a great take.
I'm just telling my truth. That's all I ever try and do.
Yeah. I know you do, with resolve.
Yes, I do with resolve. I'm just thinking about the fans.
We're going to go forward as brothers here. Yes. But let me tell you something.
Let's do brother and sister.
Yeah, okay. I'll do whatever. I'll play anything.
We're going together as siblings.
Unlike The Rock, I'll play anything. Now, but I find music biopics a waste of time. I think they're creatively bankrupt in general. Biopics in general, I don't have a whole lot of love for. They're very popular.
What about the NWA one? That was great.
Okay. I mean, I like Citizen Kane. Is that a biopic? No, it's not. It's a creative take on one person's life. And yes, I know. Yeah, I know. You're going to give me that look. I've never seen it, and I don't want to.
Citizen Kane. Of course, I haven't seen it. Okay. Why on earth would?
It's genuinely one of my favourite movies of all time. It's probably in the top 5.
If I was at a cinema and there were 2 screens and the 2 films were starting at the same time, and one was Citizen Kane and the other was a biopic of Shed 7, I'd go to the Shed 7 film.
I know you would.
Chasing Rainbows, the Shed 7 story. Listen, I'm sure it's very good, Citizen
Kane. I know you would. And going forward with resolve to my next point, they are creatively bankrupt. So in some ways... Okay, I'm saying it.
Sorry, is that confirmed?
But okay, Michael Gracie hasn't done that. He's done something different. We want big swings. Yes. And I feel like we often sit and talk about how much movies cost, and I'm doing it even now because it is insane that this has actually ended up at 110 million, even though some of that is government money, and we can all argue about the wisdom of that. He has taken a big swing. Another person who took a big... Did you see the Pharrell Williams? You won't have seen this, and I actually watched a bit of it just out of interest. Piece by Piece, which is the Pharrell Williams... They did it as one of the Lego movies.
Okay,
again, it's a big swing, but it did worse than Lego movies, and it did worse than musical biopics in terms of sort of, what you'd expect for an opening. So I suppose that, biopics are a really safe genre. People don't want big swings in them. And that makes me sad because I want big swings in things. I don't think this one fully comes off, but that's fine. At least they tried. It is insane how much money they spent on it. But I feel that it shows that you want things even safer. And in some ways, one of the safest genres, because there's lots of movies that are turned out and they should be at a certain price point. I think we're going to see even safer things, and that makes me sad. So I'm sad that Better Man hasn't done better. I, always applaud insane people, probably not in government, who are spending taxpayers' money on this sort of thing. But if private companies want to spend it, then I guess that's a matter for them. Sorry that it hasn't done better.
Would you recommend it to people having seen
Yes, I think, yes.
My favourite story on it was Michael Gracie when he was talking to Robbie Williams, and he said, what's your spirit animal? And Robbie Williams said, you know what, that morning I'd woken up in one of those moods where I just thought, no, Robbie, I'd like proper, just affirming who I am as a human being and really trying to be good to myself. So I said, my spirit animal, I would say a lion. And apparently Michael Gracie just looked at him and went, are you sure? And Robbie immediately went, a monkey? And you think, yeah, fair enough.
I think it's very good on, actually, in a way, it doesn't really get past the whole idea of the chimp thing, and it doesn't do a whole lot with it. It's sort of technically...
But why was it 110 million? I mean, that's a lot. And it doesn't have any huge names in it.
It's very expensive. CGI is very expensive
so it's all
all the way through.
The CGI stuff.
Yes, and
but you can do that with your
what,
phone. You can put bunny ears just using your iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't done it on Snapchat. They didn't go with that. They
would
went
have saved
with
some money.
Masses of Australian tax dollars. So
that would have saved the Australian government.
You can't do that on your
money.
phone, can you? I wish I could. It's very good, actually, if you're interested in music and bands and things like that, and fame in general. It is good, I think, on this kind of grim jealousy, even when you're at the top. And that's a big part of, certainly a big part of Robbie Williams, and a big part of lots of stars who don't admit that. Well, on that note, Richard, I'm going to ask you, do you have any recommendations? I'm still so deep in the absolute horror of Beast Games, which is becoming more and more dark and twisted.
Quite something, isn't it, Beast Games?
Oh my God. It's really, truly grotesque. We might have to have a wrap round on that at the end, I have to say. But anyway, you give me something that... is actually not dystopian.
I've been away for a week, and I read a wonderful book called Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. And it's about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and it's about the people, it's about the history. It's a really extraordinary book, beautifully written, very, very insightful, fascinating about that whole world that, you might know bits of, but not the whole story if you don't live in Northern Ireland or Ireland. I just thought it was wonderful. It's an extraordinary book, and I would really recommend it. And there is now a dramatisation of it as well on Disney, which I haven't seen, but I will do. But I would read the book first. I think the book is terrific. Right,
we will be back on Thursday with a questions and answers edition.
I look forward to it ever so much. We'll see you then.
Take care. Bye bye.